The title of today's story is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So let's start the story. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a beautiful princess named Snow White. She had skin as white as snow, lips as red as roses, and hair as black as ebony. Her stepmother, the queen, was very jealous of Snow White's beauty. The queen owned a magical mirror, and every day she would ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror always replied, "You are, my queen." This made the queen very happy. But one day, when the queen asked her mirror the same question, it replied, "Snow White is the fairest of all." The queen was angry and decided to get rid of Snow White. She called a hunter and ordered him to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. "Bring me her heart as proof," she said. The hunter took Snow White into the forest, but he did not feel like killing the innocent and beautiful Snow White. "Run away and never come back," he said kindly to Snow White. Frightened and alone, Snow White ran into the forest. The hunter gives the heart of a dead deer to the queen as proof. Snow White wandered until she found a small hut. Tired, she entered the hut and found it empty but very strange. Inside the cottage, everything was tiny. There were 7 little beds, 7 little chairs, and a small table set for 7. Snow White was so tired that she lay down on the beds, falling asleep immediately. The cottage belonged to 7 dwarfs who worked in a nearby mine. When they returned home that evening, they were surprised to find Snow White asleep in their bed. "Who is this beautiful girl?" they wondered. Snow White woke up and told them her story. The dwarfs, feeling sorry for her, offered her a place to stay in exchange for helping with the housework. Snow White agreed. "I am grateful for your kindness," she said. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the queen once again asked her mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror replied, "Snow White, who lives with the 7 dwarfs, is the fairest of them all." The queen was enraged and decided to take matters into her own hand. She disguised herself as an old peddler woman and went to the dwarf's cottage with a basket of poisoned apples. The queen knocked at the door, and Snow White, being kind and trusting, opened the door. "Would you like to buy an apple, dear?" the queen asked. Snow White hesitated, but the apple looked very delicious. She agreed, but as soon as she ate an apple, she immediately fell unconscious and fell on the ground. When the dwarfs returned home, they found Snow White lying lifeless on the floor. They were heartbroken and placed her in a glass coffin, unable to bear burying her. They kept watch over her day and night. One day, a prince from a neighboring kingdom was walking through the forest and saw the beautiful Snow White in a glass coffin. He had heard about her beauty and was infatuated with her even in death. The prince asked the dwarfs if he could take her to his palace. At first they were reluctant, but after seeing the genuine love and sorrow of the prince, they agreed. As the prince's servants were carrying Snow White, they tripped over a stone lying on the way, and a piece of the poisoned apple fell out of Snow White's throat. Snow White gasped and opened her eyes. She was alive! The prince was overjoyed and told her about his love. Snow White, grateful and touched by his kindness, agrees to marry him. The news of Snow White's revival and engagement reached the queen, who asked her mirror once again, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror replied, "Snow White, who is now a queen, is the fairest of them all." The queen was so angry that she shattered the mirror and fled the kingdom, never to be seen again. Snow White and the prince had a grand wedding. The 7 dwarfs were the guests of honor, and they danced happily. Snow White invited them to come and stay at the castle whenever they want. Snow White and the prince ruled the kingdom with kindness and wisdom, and they lived happily ever after.